Stand on the future Brooklyn shoreline 12,000 years ago and look west. Manhattan is there, but almost nothing about it is familiar. There is no skyline, no bridge, no Wall Street, no Statue of Liberty watching over the harbor. Even the water is different. Sea level is lower, and the East River has not yet taken its modern form. Cold grassland and young spruce forest cover ridges carved by ice. Small groups of hunters move through the region carrying stone-tipped weapons. They do not know they are crossing the future center of a global city. Keep watching the southern tip of the island. The forest will thicken. Streams will cut through rocky ground. Lenape communities will fish, trade, and travel along routes that future streets will follow. Then a ship will enter the harbor. A timber fort will rise. A defensive wall will give its name to the most powerful financial street on Earth. The harbor will fill with sails, then steamships. Hills will be blasted apart. Wetlands will vanish. The shoreline will be pushed outward with timber, stone, soil, and rubble. A bridge once considered impossible will cross directly in front of us. Buildings will rise higher than church towers, then higher than anything the city has ever seen. Two enormous towers will transform the skyline, and their destruction will leave an absence visible around the world. The future Brooklyn waterfront, looking west across the East River towards Lower Manhattan. The southern tip remains near the center. New York Harbor opens to the left, while Manhattan stretches north. From here, we can watch three stories unfold. The first is the transformation of land. Forests become farms, farms become streets, and water becomes real estate. The second is the transformation of movement. Canoes become sailing ships, ferries, steamers, bridges, subways, and aircraft. The third is the struggle over belonging. Manhattan will be a Lenape homeland, a Dutch trading post, an English port, a slave-holding city, a revolutionary battlefield, an immigrant destination, and a symbol claimed by the world. But beneath every version of Manhattan, the original island will remain. Around 12,000 years ago, the last ice age is ending. The enormous glacier that once covered this region has retreated north, leaving exposed rock, ridges of sediment, and a landscape still adjusting to rapid warming. Cold parklands spread across the region as the first indigenous communities travel through newly available land. Archaeologists call these early people Paleo-Indians. Their mobile groups carry shaped stone points, scrapers, and cutting tools, following animals, fish, and seasonal plants. The southern Manhattan does not yet look like the island we recognize. The ocean is lower, and the harbor's edges lie beyond their present positions. Then, the climate warms. Forests replace colder vegetation. Mammoths and mastodons disappear. Sea level rises. Salt water enters low channels, separating land that had once been connected. The island becomes more recognizable, but the city is still thousands of years away. Centuries become millennia. Oak, chestnut, and hickory forests spread across Manhattan. Freshwater streams descend between rocky hills. Marshes absorb storms. Oyster reefs filter the harbor. Fish move through tidal channels in numbers modern New Yorkers would struggle to imagine. The island is part of the homeland of Lenape peoples. Communities hunt, fish, gather plants, and cultivate crops. Canoes move between Manhattan, Long Island, Staten Island, and the mainland. Trails connect seasonal settlements, trading places, and agricultural ground. One of those routes will survive every conquest that follows. It will become Broadway. At the southern end, people exchange goods and news beside a protected Atlantic harbor. Freshwater, timber, food, and anchorage will later attract outsiders. The Lenape understand the island through relationships among people, water, animals, and seasons. Europeans will see many of the same features and translate them into property. That difference will change everything. In September 1609, the Dutch-sponsored ship Half Moon enters New York Harbor under Henry Hudson. Hudson is searching for a route to Asia. He does not find it. Instead, reports of deep water, timber, and valuable furs encouraged Dutch merchants to return. The first non-Indigenous resident known by name is not a Dutch governor. In 1613, Jan Rodriguez, a free black sailor and interpreter from Santo Domingo, stays behind to trade with Lenape communities. He moves between cultures before a permanent Dutch town exists. That detail matters. From its earliest colonial moment, Manhattan is already connected to Europe, Africa, the Caribbean, and Indigenous America. Trade begins before the city. Competition follows trade. Soon, a corporation will try to turn the harbor into a colony. In 1624, Dutch settlers established themselves in the harbor. By 1625, the center of the colony moves to Manhattan's southern tip. The trees disappear around a growing fort. Fort Amsterdam rises near the water. Timber houses gather behind it. A windmill turns above rough lanes. Small docks reach into the harbor. This is New Amsterdam. It is not yet a great city. It is a commercial outpost designed to control trade. Ships unload tools, livestock, weapons, and settlers. Beaver pelts leave for Europe. European, African, and Indigenous people meet in streets shaped by shorelines and property lines. In 1625, the first enslaved Africans arrive. Their labor builds roads, farms, and fortifications. An older Indigenous trail is widened into the road that will become Broadway. In 1653, a defensive wall rises across the northern edge of the settlement, built partly through enslaved labor. The wall will eventually disappear. Its name will not. Wall Street begins as a boundary and later becomes a symbol of global finance. In 1664, English warships enter the harbor. The Dutch surrender, and New Amsterdam becomes New York, named for the Duke of York. The flag changes, but the town does not begin again. Dutch houses, merchants, and customs remain. English law and imperial trade are layered over them. The port expands. Ships crowd the waterfront. Warehouses grow along the East River. Tavern signs swing above muddy streets. Enslaved people perform much of the hardest labor, while sailors, artisans, merchants, and immigrants shape colonial society. Beyond the built-up southern tip, most of Manhattan remains farms, woods, and country estates. Then, imperial conflict reaches the harbor. In 1776, the American Revolution turns New York into a battlefield. George Washington's forces retreat after defeat on Long Island. British troops occupy Manhattan. On September 21st, fire destroys nearly one-third of the city. From Brooklyn, the southern skyline glows red. Both sides accuse the other of starting the fire, but no final answer survives. Everyone understands that the old colonial city is ending. The British leave in 1783. New York becomes the temporary capital of the new United States. On April 30th, 1789, George Washington takes the presidential oath at Federal Hall on Wall Street. Political power soon moves elsewhere. Commercial power does not. The harbor connects Atlantic trade to the interior, but hills, streams, and estates obstruct growth. Then, in 1811, planners make an astonishing decision. They draw a grid across most of Manhattan. The city remains concentrated in the south. Much of the planned area is still farmland and rock. Yet the map treats the future as if it has already happened. Straight avenues and numbered streets cut through hills, ponds, homes, and older roads. Surveyors place markers across private property. Workers later blast rock, fill depressions, and force the island to match the drawing. New York does not simply expand into the landscape, it edits the landscape to fit a piece of paper. One loss is especially revealing. Collect Pond, once a freshwater source north of the colonial town, becomes polluted by workshops and slaughterhouses. Rather than restore it, the city drains and fills it. Streets and buildings rise above the buried water, but the unstable ground will trouble foundations for generations. Manhattan is learning to hide its geography. In 1825, the Erie Canal opens. For Manhattan, the result is explosive. Goods from the Great Lakes and the interior can now reach the Hudson River and New York Harbor. Manufactured goods move west. Grain and timber move east. The waterfront becomes an engine. Masts crowd the harbor. Steamships join sailing vessels. Warehouses, counting houses, and markets multiply. Merchants grow wealthy because so much passes through New York. The shoreline begins moving. Builders create new land around Lower Manhattan using stone, soil, and debris. Wharves advance into the rivers. Streets that once touched water become inland blocks. Growth brings danger. Lower Manhattan becomes overcrowded. Clean water is limited. Disease moves quickly through dense neighborhoods. Fires jump between buildings. In 1835, a great fire destroys hundreds of structures in the financial district. The city rebuilds in brick and stone. Then it grows even faster. Yet the city cannot survive on commerce alone. Fresh water becomes a crisis. In 1842, the Croton Aqueduct begins delivering water from far north of Manhattan. Fountains flow, reservoirs fill, and firefighting improves. The achievement allows the population to grow, but it also reveals a pattern New York will repeat. When the island cannot supply what the city needs, vast systems reach outward and pull resources inward to survive. Famine, revolution, poverty, and opportunity send millions across the Atlantic. Irish and German immigrants crowd into Lower Manhattan. Later arrivals come from Italy, Eastern Europe, and beyond. Five Points becomes notorious for poverty and crime, but also holds families, churches, workshops, and music. Languages change every few steps. Children work, vendors shout. Horses struggle through mud and waste. Tenements rise with dark interior rooms designed to hold as many tenants as possible. New York offers opportunity, but rarely comfort. Black New Yorkers face violent exclusion. In 1863, anger over military conscription, class inequality, and racism erupts into the draft riots. Black New Yorkers are attacked. Homes and institutions are destroyed. Federal troops eventually suppress the violence. The skyline keeps rising, while the city beneath it reveals a contradiction that will never fully disappear. Manhattan can create wealth faster than it creates justice. Then, an impossible structure begins climbing over the East River. In 1869, construction begins on the Brooklyn Bridge. The stone towers rise directly between Brooklyn and Manhattan. Workers descend into pressurized caissons beneath the river. Cables stretch across open water. The project takes 14 years. When the bridge opens in 1883, it is the longest suspension bridge in the world. Pedestrians, carriages, and trains cross high above the East River. Manhattan and Brooklyn are connected by a permanent road. The bridge changes more than transportation. It changes the meaning of distance. Brooklyn enters Manhattan's daily working world, and the harbor gains a stone gateway. 3 years later, the Statue of Liberty rises in the harbor. In 1892, Ellis Island opens as a federal immigration station. Almost 12 million immigrants will be processed there before it closes in 1954. For most, inspection ends in entry. For others, in detention, separation, or rejection. The harbor is both a doorway and a test. By the late 19th century, Lower Manhattan has little empty land left. So the city changes direction. Steel frames and elevators let office towers rise above streets where sunlight struggles to reach the ground. In 1904, the first subway opens. Workers can live farther from Lower Manhattan and still reach offices, factories, and shops. The city expands into a connected metropolis. In 1913, the Woolworth Building rises above City Hall like a Gothic cathedral built for commerce. More towers follow. The skyline becomes an advertisement. This city is modern, fast, and impossibly wealthy. But the wealth is unstable. In 1929, the stock market crashes. Crowds gather around Wall Street. Banks fail. Construction slows. Families lose work and homes. The towers remain standing, but the confidence that built them has fractured. New York responds as it always does. It keeps moving. During the mid-20th century, cars and trucks replaced many waterfront functions. Elevated roads cut along the rivers. Neighborhoods are demolished for offices, housing, and transport. The working harbor shifts away. Piers and manufacturing decline as finance and media grow. Then Lower Manhattan attempts its largest transformation yet. Construction begins on the World Trade Center in 1966. Entire blocks are cleared. Excavators dig beside the Hudson, while engineers construct a retaining wall to hold back groundwater. The Twin Towers begin their rise in 1968. By the early 1970s, they dominate the skyline. Their scale makes the older financial district appear miniature. From Brooklyn, the towers become a compass. They tell people where Manhattan begins. For 3 decades, they form one of Earth's most recognizable silhouettes. Then comes the morning when the view changes in less than 2 hours. On September 11, 2001, terrorists hijack 4 aircraft. 2 are flown into the Twin Towers. The towers burn and collapse. Nearly 3,000 people are killed, including workers, passengers, and first responders. Smoke covers Lower Manhattan. But the true story is not the spectacle of destruction. It is the human absence left behind. Families wait for calls that never come. Rescue and recovery continue for months. For years afterward, the missing towers remain visible even when the sky is clear. The skyline becomes a memorial through absence. Then, slowly, construction returns. The new World Trade Center rises around a memorial built within the footprints of the destroyed towers. One World Trade Center becomes the highest point in the rebuilt Lower Manhattan skyline. Commuters, tourists, offices, and transport return. But another force reminds New York that stone, steel, and glass do not defeat geography. Water. In October 2012, Hurricane Sandy pushes storm surge into the harbor. Water overtops Lower Manhattan's edges, floods streets and tunnels, cuts power, and damages buildings. For a few hours, the original landscape reappears through the modern one. Low ground fills first. Old shorelines reveal themselves. The harbor reminds Manhattan that much of its edge was created by people and can still be reclaimed by the sea. Today, coastal barriers, raised infrastructure, and resilience projects are reshaping Lower Manhattan. The future may depend as much on drainage and coastal defenses as on towers. Our camera has watched 12,000 years pass. It watched ice leave bare ground. It watched forests cover the island. It watched indigenous communities build lives around water and seasons. It watched Hudson enter the harbor, unaware of what would follow. It watched Jan Rodriguez trade before New Amsterdam existed. It watched a Dutch fort become an English port. It watched enslaved Africans build roads and walls. It watched revolution burn through Lower Manhattan. It watched planners draw streets across farms and hills. It watched the Erie Canal connect the harbor to a continent. It watched immigrants arrive, tenements rise, and crowds cross the river. It watched Manhattan climb into the sky. Then it watched part of that sky disappear. Every version of New York believes it is permanent. None is. The shoreline moved, the hills were cut down, streams were buried, neighborhoods vanished, towers rose and fell. Yet beneath Broadway, an indigenous trail still guides movement. Beneath streets and basements, buried watercourses still search for the harbor. Lower Manhattan's towers stand partly on land pushed into the water. The greatest illusion of Manhattan is that the city defeated nature. It did not. It negotiated with nature, ignored it, buried it, and now must negotiate again. Look at the skyline tonight. Its lights appear permanent. But so did every city before it. 12,000 years from now, Manhattan may still exist, but it will not be this Manhattan. New York's true monument is not one bridge, tower, or street. It is the ability to become something else before the world forces it to. New York was not built once. It is still being built. Subscribe for more fixed camera journeys through the rise, destruction, and reinvention of the world's greatest cities. And tell us in the comments, which place should we watch evolve next?